Ancestral stories that interfere with your work, part two. We did part one last week, and today we're focusing on four additional stories. We're going beneath the surface of your work to talk about ancestral stories of grief, fear, shame, and scarcity. Those are some of the most powerful karmic stories, ancestral stories that can impact our work. We're looking at these inherited stories that can influence how you name what you do, how you speak about your gifts, how you choose your people, and how you receive clients, how you value your work, very important, and how much money you will allow wisdom to occupy. Yes. So, welcome to the Conjure Room. I'm Dr. MoNique. For those of you that don't know, I'm the Conjure CEO and trusted advisor to women over 50 and men too who want to claim their inherited gifts. If you've been trying to name your work, refine your offer, or explain what you do, attract the right clients, or understand how to bring all of your wisdom into form, this conversation matters today because sometimes the issue is deeper than a title. Sometimes the confusion is not really about the wording or how to speak your offer or your work. Often, that hesitation you feel, that unknowing that's inside of you, they're both connected to an ancestral story. A story that has been shaping what is safe, what is allowed, what is valuable, what's visible, and what's possible for you. And today we're focusing on four stories: grief, shame, scarcity, and fear. Those four. Last week we looked at abandonment, abuse, anger, and betrayal. So this week we'll continue the ancestral story foundation by looking at the stories that can sit just beneath your work and influence the way you carry and what you know about what it is that you offer. And just a little bit about what I do. I offer ancestral business and legacy guidance for women over 50 who are ready to understand their wisdom, their earned, learned, and inherited wisdom. Let's be clear, we have all three of those, so that you can create a real clear body of work, a meaningful paid work, something that's soul aligned that actually brings income to you. Or it may be an advisory path. You may have a book that needs to come through you, a ministry, or some type of a business or a legacy project. And that's what I do. Through ancestral communication, I give voice to the messages your ancestors want you to hear. I listen for the guidance that actually helps you understand what lives in your bloodline, what's inherited that can help you with your work, and what's inherited that sometimes can interfere with your work. And then we are able to name the work after we actually have that connection with your ancestors. And that is a part of my ancestral medicine. What I know is that you're not coming in here because you have a lack of wisdom or talent or expertise. When you get to this point in your life, you've gained some. And you're here because probably that wisdom that you have inside of you needs a clearer path. By this stage of life, you've gathered wisdom from many, many places. You've earned wisdom, earned it through living, through leading, caregiving, serving, grieving, deciding, rebuilding, creating, and becoming. You've also learned wisdom through your study, through certifications, professional experience, education, spiritual practices, leadership, the work you've done over time. The wisdom you inherited through your bloodline is the one that most of us overlook. We don't even realize it's there. We don't acknowledge it. We don't know what it is. And this wisdom may manifest as medicine, instincts, a deeper intuition, a specific method that you're here to offer, a spiritual sensitivity that you have, some ability around discernment, healing gifts, just a practical knowing, and oftentimes for many, the ability to see things before they actually take place. So things that others may miss. But the deep question that many people have is, how do you use all of that now? How do you use the learned, earned, and inherited wisdom now? And what I find is when women come to work with me, the question they're seeking answers to is often things around, what do I call my work? Who is my ideal client? What is my real niche? What belongs in the offer that I want to serve and give to people? And what book needs to come through me, or a body of teaching, or a service, a circle, a ministry? Could be a retreat, a method, a business direction. And for many, it's even a legacy project. And that's where ancestral guidance is both real and essential for us because it can help answer all of those questions. When earned, learned, inherited wisdom unite, a body of work becomes clear. And as I was connecting with the ancestors, as I always do before I do these talks, there's a few things that they said happens when this work comes through. And it's so true because I've seen it in my clients. You'll have a method that begins to take shape, something that's uniquely yours, a unique way of offering your work. You begin to be able to name the service that you want to provide or identify the subject of your book and the message you want it to carry. When we heal and clear these ancestral stories, your business becomes more aligned with your soul's purpose. And that legacy project that you've been thinking about and been circling around, you stop circling. You stop keeping it in private and you begin to allow it to take shape because these stories are no longer interfering. So ancestral stories interfere when they stand kind of in the pathway between your ancestral wisdom, spiritual guidance, and your soul's work. And they're there. All of us have them on some level. Some of us are impacted by them in deeper ways than others, but we all have these stories. And because of that, they often influence our decisions before we're even realizing that our decisions are based on these stories. We may unconsciously be making decisions, and these stories are sort of underneath the surface. They can impact what you call yourself. They impact how you define your work. They affect who you believe will value the work that you're here to offer. They affect whether your gifts stay private, informal, underpriced, overexplained, or hidden behind language that doesn't fully tell the truth of what it is that you offer. And I see that happening so often. So for today, I want you to just listen to the story beneath the work, not as something that's wrong with you. Let's make that clear. These stories don't mean that there's something wrong with you or even wrong with your family lineage. They just are stories that exist. They're lived experiences that your ancestors have had. So there isn't anything wrong with you. In fact, as someone who is heading in this part of your life, this season of your life, you're brilliant, you're wise, you're intuitive, and you're experienced. So listen for an inherited story asking to be recognized today, asking to be healed, asking to be released. Because when these stories begin to release, your relationship with the ancestral guidance becomes deeper and deeper. And then the path begins to clear. And when your ancestral guidance deepens, your relationship with the ancestors deepen, allowing you to have a direct connection to them for guidance around your next steps and what things you need to do and support and help that they are available to help you with. Because your healthy and wise ancestors have more room to support the work, to help guide your decisions, and to strengthen your discernment. And they have the space to help you recognize and attract people that you are uniquely here to serve. And that's a big one because oftentimes we think we have to do this on our own, but we have ancestors that can help us attract the right people to us. And when we have ancestral stories that are sitting under the surface, sometimes that can make it a little difficult. Let's dive into the stories. I'm going to go through all four of them. And I'm also going to give you a journaling prompt to help you begin to think about how this story is impacting you or if it's impacting you. The first story is ancestral grief. Ancestral grief begins when a lineage carries loss that was really never fully witnessed, acknowledged, processed, or really laid down and let go of. This is deeper than the grief that you may have experienced, which is important as well. And these ancestral stories impact how you process grief. But we're talking about the stories that your ancestors experienced. The grief that may have started from a soldier that never returned home, or a child who died too soon, or a family who was forced off their land, or a home that was eventually lost. Could have been a business that collapsed. Could have been an ancestor who had a job loss that impacted the future of the household. It could be a result of migration or enslavement that required leaving behind language, culture, property, and safety. And it doesn't matter if it was a choice or if it was forced, it can create grief. Your ancestors in those situations, they had to just keep living. They fed their children, they found work, they protected family, made decisions, and they continued to move forward because survival demanded that they keep moving, hoping, believing, praying, and having faith. But that didn't mean that the story was healed because the grief behind all of the things they experienced, it stayed beneath the surface because there was no room to stop. There was no room to feel the weight of what happened. The ancestral grief then became a story that has been passed through generations. And the story can show up in many forms. And the story may say things like, don't get too attached, do not want too much because you may lose it. Don't celebrate too soon because things could fall apart. Don't build too boldly because somebody may come and tear it down. Don't trust stability because there is none. It can be gone tomorrow. And don't let people see what matters to you because what matters can then be taken away. Those are all the things that show up when ancestral grief is playing a part of our lives. And then it interferes with your work. The work can feel heavy before you're able to name it. Some grief can also help you carry wisdom born of loss, transition, endurance, and deep experience. And that wisdom is real. And it's wonderful. It's a real piece that you need. But it can also create an interference and make the work that you're here to do feel heavy and overwhelming. It can prevent you from seeing the possibilities that are available to you. It can make naming the work feel like opening up some pain sometimes. And those ancestral grief stories can make you unconsciously hold back joy and excitement. It can affect your income. That's a big one. It can affect your income. A lot of people don't think of it that way. They think more of scarcity as an impact on your income, and we'll talk about that. But that isn't the only place. Grief can do that as well. And it's because lineage learned that loss follows some type of attachment. So ancestral can also affect who you believe you are here to serve. It may pull you towards people you want to rescue because grief in the lineage has not been fully tended to. It can make you feel like you have to give away your services, keep your prices low, offer a lot of free stuff, those kinds of things, because you begin to think that your work isn't going to be valued, and unconsciously you're wanting to avoid that grief. It can confuse your service as someone else's pain. And it may lead you to build work involving pain instead of wisdom that came through it. Your wise ancestors can help you separate wisdom from the burden. And there is a difference. There is wisdom that can come through these ancestral stories, but there's also a burden that comes through. And we want to know the difference because we want to release the burden and embrace the wisdom. They can show you what needs to be released and how ancestral grief stories can support you and that really unique medicine that you carry, that only you have. To help you begin uncovering the stories, as I mentioned, I have some journaling prompts. And I will make sure that I include these in the email when I send out the replay. And I'll also come and drop the comments, the journaling questions into the Facebook chat. So the first one is, where has ancestral grief made your work feel heavier, less visible, or harder to name than it needs to be? So just think about that for a second. Where has ancestral grief made your work feel heavier, made it feel less visible, or harder to name than it needs to be? Okay, let's move on to story number 2, ancestral wisdom. Ancestral shame. Yeah, ancestral wisdom is so important, but we're talking about ancestral shame now. The second story, shame. Ancestral shame often begins when someone in the lineage was made to feel wrong for being visible or gifted or different or outspoken or spiritual, maybe poor. Maybe they were treated bad because they were ambitious or they were powerful or they're educated or maybe even uneducated, unmarried, divorced, intuitive, creative, or free. Shame becomes a story when family learns that acceptance requires hiding part of the truth. Hiding part of the truth. It may teach you to be useful without being too powerful. It may teach you to be spiritual without saying too much. It can cause you to help everyone else while keeping your own spiritual authority softened. It can teach you to stay respectable, agreeable, or vague. And that comes because being clear in your lineage once came with judgment. Ancestral shame, when it interferes with your work, it affects the language. You may keep changing the title. How many of you done that? If you keep changing the title of your work, drop a yes in the comments. It can make your work sound more ordinary than it really is. Remember, if you're with me, you've come here with a unique medicine. Your work is not ordinary. It's very special. If you're working with the ancestors, then you may hide the ancestral part. You may bury your spiritual gift under safer words, things that don't reveal, words that don't reveal what you're really doing. You may over explain because the direct language makes you feel exposed. And you may choose an audience that's so broad that no one can truly recognize or hear herself in your message. So shame can often sound like discernment. It might say things like, be careful, don't say it that way. Don't mention the ancestors, spirit, goddesses, angels too soon. Don't claim that gift. Don't charge for something that comes to you naturally. I hear that one frequently. And don't let people think you're too much. Those thoughts may sound reasonable, but shame is underneath them and is often the place that is driving those statements. And the reason is because shame is trying to keep you acceptable to the people who are really not your people. And that matters because your right clients, they need the clearest vision of your work and they need to hear what you do, what you offer, and how you offer it. And when you're not sharing your language, you begin to dilute it. You dilute it because of the shame, consciously or unconsciously. So what happens is they can't recognize the work. They can't recognize your medicine because you've softened it beyond recognition. You learned wisdom matters. You earned wisdom, and that matters. You inherited wisdom, that matters. Shame can interfere with it if you're not able to acknowledge it. Yeah, you've changed titles on your art and the actual art itself. Sometimes stay away from mystical terms like conjure, hoodoo, orishas. Yes, yes. And that often comes from shame. Shame interferes when it makes one part of that wisdom feel less legitimate than the others. Your wise ancestors can help you recover the language that belongs uniquely to you. They can show you what has been hidden for acceptance and what is ready to be spoken with maturity, dignity, and authority. The journaling question for shame. Where has ancestral shame made your work more acceptable instead of the true power it holds? Where has ancestral shame made your work more acceptable instead of the true power it holds? And I'll give you a second to just think about that. Yeah, Steve, still haven't been able to find a way to make intuition into a career. That's something we can talk about because your intuition can be a part of what you offer and what you do. Absolutely. And that's common. We oftentimes, because of these ancestral stories that are playing underneath the surface, it blocks us. And it isn't because the ancestors are trying to harm us or hurt us. It's because they're trying to protect us from their experiences. And that's where some of these stories come in. And that may be what's happening. Is there some protection there that's keeping you from really being able to see clearly how you can offer your gift of intuition? Okay, the third story, ancestral scarcity. That's story number 3. Ancestral scarcity, I want to say this and I want to be clear. Ancestral scarcity is much larger than money. It may have roots in land loss, unstable work, unpaid labor, failed harvests, even closed businesses, wages that never matched the labor, businesses that failed, women carrying households with too little support, or generations learning to make do with almost nothing left for desire, rest, or creative expression. It could be a lack of love, a lack of freedom, or a lack of opportunities. Scarcity becomes a story when survival teaches us that the family never had enough. And if you experience that, or if you know of family members that experience that, and you may have heard it, there's more month than money, there's not enough. And that may mean that there wasn't truly enough, or it could be that that was just the story that was passed down. I've heard things like not enough time, not enough support. We've heard not enough money before. Money doesn't grow on trees. Not enough safety if you do have abundance of some sort. And not enough room for your own work, meaning not enough time for you to actually do your own work. I want you to drop a yes in the comments if you recognize any of these statements. When ancestral scarcity interferes with your work, it shapes the sense of value. You know your guidance helps people and you still keep it informal. You know your guidance helps people, but you still keep it informal. You let people pick your brain. They pick your brain instead of inviting them into a paid container. You offer your work for free all the time. Giving away your work is not a problem, but when shame and fear and grief and scarcity are underneath, that's when it becomes a problem. You may underprice because the work feels natural to you. So you don't feel like you're supposed to charge for it because somewhere along the line you were told, well, you're naturally good at this, so you shouldn't charge for it. You delay the offer because the money brings up tension. Someone says to you, how can I work with you? And you delay the offer. You don't say much, you get quiet, you don't give them the information. If any of those have come up for you, you can just type a yes, yes, okay, I'm seeing that. Yes, yes. Yeah. And this is where scarcity becomes so costly for you. Your body of work, it needs structure, it needs language, a container, a price, a pathway, and a way for the right people to find it and to find you. And without structure, your wisdom remains scattered across private notes, casual conversations with people, half written outlines, unpaid emotional labor, and generous guidance that never turns into a supported body of work. That's what happens when there's scarcity playing under the surface. Great, you're coming out of underpricing. That's beautiful. You still don't even know how to interact offline. Okay, those are things that we can definitely talk about. Scarcity also affects our ability to attract clients. If you're unclear about the value of your work, your message will carry that uncertainty. If you're apologetic about receiving the invitation, you'll feel hesitant. If you keep the work too small, people who need the depth of what you offer, they may not recognize it's actually for them. Your wise ancestors can help you distinguish between generosity and depletion. It's okay to be generous, but you have to really take a look at, are you being generous or are you operating from scarcity? And your ancestors can show you where old survival pressure is still shaping your pricing, your offer, your visibility, and your willingness to receive support. The journal question for ancestral scarcity stories is, where has ancestral scarcity led you to keep your work informal and underpriced? Where has ancestral scarcity led you to keep your work informal and underpriced? Somewhere along the line, it's playing an impact. Story number 4, ancestral fear. I saved this one for last because this is one that I hear quite frequently, particularly when people are very spiritual. There's a fear that is there. And it begins when being seen carries consequences. And that's where it began with your ancestors. It originated from that space. Somewhere in the lineage, a person may have been punished for speaking clearly or practicing their spiritual gifts. Maybe they were punished for owning land and money and challenging authority in some way, being different, being educated, being influential, being beautiful in some cases, being visible, or exercising their spiritual power. And that is a big one for people who are working in the spiritual space. Sometimes we have ancestors who were actually killed for sharing their spiritual power. They were shunned in many cases. They were abandoned, they were abused, they were betrayed. And that shows up for us as well. And the descendants of these ancestors oftentimes don't know the full story, but the body kind of carries the warning. And that warning is to stay hidden. Don't draw attention. Don't be too clear about what you offer. Don't become too visible. Don't let people know just how powerful you are. And don't name the work too specifically because once it's named, it could be judged. And we see a lot of this, particularly now where people can hide behind accounts and say whatever it is that they want to say. And I noticed that, many people have some fear because once they name it, there's a possibility that there will be people who will have something to say and really be hurtful. And I have something for that too. I teach my clients a way to deal with that. When ancestral fear interferes with your work, it keeps the work private. It keeps it vague. It delays it, or you're constantly revising it because there's a fear about releasing it. You keep waiting for that perfect name, the perfect website to be created. When I'll tell you right now, I know and have had clients that have absolutely no website that are doing quite well in their business. But when that fear is there, you may keep perfecting your website, perfecting the offer, perfecting and the audience, and perfecting the launch plan, and perfecting your confidence. But one that really shows up is you keep going and getting more and more certifications because you think that you need to perfect yourself. How many of you have done that? Maybe even unconsciously. Oh, I need to learn something else. Oh, I need to purchase this other program. Yeah. So fear oftentimes asks for certainty before it allows you to move. Your work is clarified through relationship with guidance, practice, expression, and a response from the people it's meant to serve. And when you're clear about who you serve, and the scarcity stories and the fear stories begin to release, those people will show up. And fear interferes most strongly when specificity is required. A broad message for some people feels safer. No one can reject what they cannot see clearly. This may be something that you're doing consciously, it may be something that you're doing unconsciously. A vague audience sometimes feels safer than really niching down. Niching creates visibility. And sometimes fear can make you not want to create that niche for yourself. A private gift often feels safer because a public body of work invites response. So if you keep it in private, you don't have to hear all of the responses. But that keeping it in private also doesn't allow the people who really need what you have to offer to receive it. And it also doesn't allow you to do your soul's work. The right people, the right people need for you to be clear and precise about what you offer. They need to hear themselves in your language. They need to understand the problem that you're here to help them with, the wisdom that you carry that is unique that can help them, and the kind of support that they can receive from you. They need that information. And if fear is blocking you, they're not getting the information, which then impacts your ability to attract the clients that you want to work with. The beautiful thing is your wise ancestors, the ones that I work with, they can help you understand what fear has been protecting. They can help you receive support without letting fear decide the size of your work. Fear can become information. Guidance must carry authority. So, the journaling question that will help you begin to understand where fear is impacting your work is, what part of your work keeps asking to be named? Even though ancestral fear has been standing in that doorway, what part of your work keeps asking to be named? Where are you constantly renaming or reconfiguring or perfecting that website or buying another URL? Yeah. And I want to bring these 4 stories together because they all are attached to each other in many ways. Ancestral grief can make the work feel tied to some type of loss. Ancestral shame can make it difficult for you to claim and name your work. Ancestral scarcity can distort the value, the way you receive, and the support that you receive and offer. And ancestral fear can keep the work hidden, vague, delayed, or constantly revised. Each story affects decisions. Each story can influence the name, the audience, the offer, the price, the language, the visibility, the client attraction, and the way you understand who your people are. That's why ancestral story healing matters inside of ancestral business and legacy guidance. The purpose is to release the story's authority so the wisdom can begin to flow through you with ease and comfort naturally. When the story releases, the path becomes easy to see. Your relationship with the ancestors deepens. The healthy, wise ancestors have more room to guide you. Your discernment begins to strengthen. Your work becomes less tangled with survival and more aligned with the wisdom you are here to carry. Take a moment to think about the work that you've been circling. It may be a service, a method, could be a book, a ministry, an advisory path. Maybe it's a healing practice, a teaching, a group, a retreat, a body of writing, a business direction, or even a legacy project. Close your eyes for a moment. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and give you a chance to just really kind of sit with these questions. Which story is most active around this work right now? Is it grief, shame, scarcity, or fear? It may be all of them, but there could be one that really sticks out for you. And then ask yourself, where does that story show up most clearly, excuse me? In the name, the audience, maybe in the price, the spiritual language, the invitation, the visibility, the structure, or a decision to begin? Where does that story show up most clearly for you? And when we finish, you may want to just write that down. One honest sentence, or it can even be a word that answers the question. What is the story? And where does that story show up most clearly? And if you want to share it, you're welcome to share it. I will go back and look if you're on Facebook. If you write a comment on YouTube, I'll take a look. And if you drop a comment here in our chat, I will take a look at that too. If one of these stories feels active for you, not just the four that we talked about today, scarcity, shame, fear, and grief, but also abandonment, abuse, anger, and betrayal. If one of these stories feels active, I'm offering ancestral story healing and guidance sessions. And these are focused private sessions with me where we identify one of the ancestral stories that is creating a burden and interfering with how you name your work, with your wisdom, with how you and who you serve. It is interfering with your gifts and how you attract clients or how you bring your body of work into form, then that session is for you. I communicate with your ancestors. I listen for what is under the surface. I listen for what they want you to know and how they want to guide you through beginning the release of this story. And this session is really a gateway. It's a gateway for people who know they carry earned, learned, and inherited wisdom and want clear ancestral guidance about what is interfering. But not only what, how to release it and release it once and for all. I love these sessions because that is part of my gift, my ability to accurately connect with your ancestors and hear their stories. And I think for me, it really began as a child when I listened to the stories of the ancestors. And as the ancestors shared their stories with me, I just felt a deep connection. But I also started this with listening to the elders. I listened to the elders talk about their ancestors. And that was the beginning of me hearing these stories. And now I do this with my clients. I know that the ancestors speak through me the messages that they want their descendants to hear. And I love being the messenger. I love being able to continue to share that wisdom with people. So if you're interested in one of these sessions, there's only 4. This is the last week that I'll be offering it. There's 4 sessions remaining. You don't have to do the session this week. You can actually schedule the session over the next 45 days. So you can pick when you want to schedule the session. But this is the last week that you'll be able to claim one of those spots. If you're interested, you can place story in the comments, place story. You can send me an email at drmonique@drmonique.com, put story in the subject line, or you can hit reply to the email and say story. Some of you have already replied, and I will be sending you the information later on today. But yes, please, if this is something that you think will help you and support you, if you have questions about it, you can also put story in the subject line and then send me your question and I'll answer your questions. So as we close, I want you to remember this. Your work deserves language strong enough to hold the wisdom inside of it. Your life has taught you, your training has prepared you, your bloodline has carried wisdom forward through you. An old story does not get to decide the shape, the size, the value, or the visibility of what you're here to do now and what you're called to do now. So let's release those stories. Thank you for being in the Conjure Room today. I am honored to gather with people who are ready to meet the ancestral stories with reverence, with guidance from these wise ancestors, and bring the work forward with clarity, maturity, and spiritual authority. So I'm happy that you were here with me today. And for those that dropped the names of their ancestors in the comments, I invite them to continue to join us and continue to walk and guide us in releasing these stories that need to be released. I'll see you next week, next Wednesday in the Conjure Room. And for those of you who are with me on Zoom, stay behind for a minute. We're going to have our special after talk Q&A. And if you would like to join us in the Zoom Conjure Room next time, then just put Zoom in the comments or send me a message and I will make sure that you get the link to join us so that you can be around after the conversation where I turn off the recording and we have some real talk. Bye for now.